Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
Today we're recording Season 5, Episode 14 of the podcast late on a Saturday night, May 9th of 2020. And, we're a little removed from the NFL draft here. We've had some time to digest the picks, and we took a look at everything that happened from the Steelers' end and all 6 of their picks. And we'll get into a little bit of a discussion on them. But I think the most important thing when talking about these guys is you got to think about the fact that A, the Steelers didn't have a first-round pick this year, and B, with everything going on with the pandemic, I think fans need to realize that these guys are probably going to have some of the hardest transitions from college to the pros, maybe that we've seen from NFL draft picks in a long time when you consider that this is such a strange set of circumstances, which is going to probably change the preparation because there's going to be no OTAs or true rookie mini camps. They're going to basically have to come in and be ready to play right away.
Yeah, man, it's going to be tough to come in and play right away, especially with the training camp not being here and stuff. This is an odd year for rookies.
So even though we had said, right away going in, we would want guys that could contribute right away, I think it's possible that looking at who the Steelers took, that maybe instead they went the opposite direction because they might have thought if these guys aren't going to contribute much anyways, maybe they figured they'd take bigger chances, try to swing for the fences. I think you saw that with a few of these picks.
Yeah, I think I could agree to that. It seems like a lot of these players are guys that they just thought that were the best player available, especially with the round 4 pick,
So I took a bigger focus today on the first 2 picks. The Steelers had no day 1 picks. They had 2 day 2 picks, and they are Chase Claypool, the receiver from Notre Dame, at 49, and then at 102, they took Alex Highsmith, the edge rusher from Charlotte. So why don't we start with Claypool? The first round unfolded. First, let's just talk about the draft itself in general real quick. Kind of an interesting experience, the whole virtual look and Roger Goodell looking like a human and not like a hated commissioner of a sport, just chilling in what he said was his basement. I don't believe that that's his basement, but what he said was his basement, and just kind of the whole virtual feel and seeing all the players getting drafted around their families. It was definitely a unique experience and one that I kind of enjoyed.
I can't say much because I never watched the NFL draft. I know that a lot of people said they like this format better. I always just use Twitter. I like knowing the pick first. I don't really care for all the other hoo-nanny and all that stuff. It always comes to Twitter eventually. Any of the fun stuff, like the memes and the great stories and stuff, they always come to Twitter. And I get to see the pick before they get announced. So I can't really speak on the quality of this year's draft coverage.
Well, I will say this. My 2 main issues were, number 1, the pace of it, because Twitter always has the answer first. And I noticed that on day 3, sometimes they announced a pick. Meanwhile, 3 picks later was the actual pick on the clock at that point. It felt like it was really lagging behind. I don't know. I know you said you didn't watch it, but I'm sure you've seen at least parts of drafts before. That seems a little much.
That's what made me switch to Twitter only, because I used to do the draft and Twitter at the same time, and then I just found Twitter would be 3 picks ahead. It's just watching the draft. It wasn't I don't know, it felt like a waste of time. But still, other people disagreed. A lot of this draft was one of the most watched of all time. I believe it was up 20% from last year. Maybe it was 19. That sounds familiar. But yeah. I mean, nothing else is going on in sports, so it makes sense.
I was going to say that's probably a huge, if not the biggest contributing factor to that. One other complaint that I had was just I felt like I understand that there a lot of these people have big, sad sob stories that made them who they are today. But honestly didn't want to hear about everything because I felt like I heard something horrible with every person, and it honestly just kind of it was a downer half the time, and it was like, wow, I don't know, it was just pretty depressing sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Some of that stuff is probably should be kept personal. Doesn't need to be mentioned on TV.
But it gets views, and that's what it's all about, obviously. But in any case, let's get back to the task at hand. Chase Claypool from Notre Dame, not a name that I had connected to the Steelers a lot. We had talked a lot about Miles Boykin the previous year, and they're similar profiled in terms of players. Obviously, they were teammates at Notre Dame, and coming out, they didn't have a ton of production. But Claypool was a guy not really on my radar. The only receiver left at that point that I thought had a really good chance of going to Pittsburgh was Denzel Mims. He ended up going, what was it, 11 picks later to the Jets, Austin?
Yeah, 10 picks. 10 picks. The Jets traded back 11 picks, but it was 10 picks after the Steelers.
Gotcha. So, I was A, surprised that it wasn't Mims, and then B, on top of that, I was a little surprised that it was Claypool because from what I had understood, he was a guy that may have been thought for later in the second round, maybe early third round. I guess it really doesn't make that much of a difference considering the situation and the fact that it was already a mid-second round pick. But I was surprised to see that the name was Claypool at the end of the day.
Yeah, the Claypool pick was definitely interesting. I was super excited when I first saw the pick. Especially since it wasn't a quarterback or running back. A lot of Steelers fans wanted Dobbins. I was like, please no, please no, please no. And luckily that didn't happen. Unfortunately, Dobbins went to Ravens not too much later. But I was pretty pumped about Claypool and a little pissed. Literally, I thought about doing Claypool in my Mod Podge episode if I did a fourth player. But I ran out of time, so unfortunately, I was not able to. I was just kind of pissed off at myself because this is the second year in a row that I didn't end up seeing any guys look at any guys the Steelers drafted. But it was going to be him or the Bengals second round pick T Higgins. Anyhow, since that time, I've watched Claypool's game against Georgia, Virginia, Virginia Tech, all his pass targets in the USC game, and his highlights. And unfortunately, I'm not as excited as I was. Don't get me wrong. This pick could have been way worse. But at the end of the day, I view Claypool as a round 3 receiver. Maybe his special teams abilities get him into the second, but his tape was very lackluster, I felt. It's tough for him to create much separation because of his size and his route tree. There wasn't much to it. And I feel like at the NFL level with better tacklers, he's not going to be able to pull and run through tackles like he did in college. Just overall, I was neither impressed or disappointed based on the tape alone. I felt meh. Where the disappointment can come is what happened right before, and we just alluded to it. 10 picks. The Jets were at pick 48, right, and traded back with the Seahawks, somehow managing to move back 11 spots to 59, and were able to still get a third-round pick at 101, which was already great value. They then went on to trade 101 for 125, 129, and a 2021 6. So they were able to move back 11 spots and get 2 fourths and a future pick. That value has been unheard of in the last 5 years for moving back like that. I looked at all the trades back in the NFL in that span in the second round. I literally did all the work to find that. And in my head, I was looking at things, way to get Steelers get a third round pick. And even moving back 10 spots, usually the other team had to give up something to get a third round pick. So the Jets were already doing great. But to be able to get that much value out of it, trading back like that, it hurt. And then it just got worse for me. The 10 picks after the Steelers picked Claypool, Jets get Mims. Claypool should have never went before Mims. I really liked Mims' tape. And funny enough, I nearly called this exactly, saying Mims would be ideal if the Steelers could trade back in the second round and net more picks. I wouldn't be mad if the Steelers took him at 49 at all. I just think he could have been there at pick 58, and that's a direct quote. So, you have something to say about that trade?
Yeah, so real quickly, I had, when I saw that you weren't thrilled given the fact that the Jets were able to trade back and still get a guy of similar repute to Claypool, a peer, if you will. So I figured maybe the trade, why was the trade made? What is the history here? Maybe there's a connection between the coaches or the GMs, and I went and I checked out, and Pete Carroll and or sorry, not Pete Carroll. Who am I confusing myself with? Adam Gase. The Jets traded with it was the Seahawks. Who's that? For some reason, I was thinking a different team, but in any case, I was looking back at Adam Gase and Pete Carroll, and I was looking back at the two general managers, and never were they at the same place at the same time in their past. So I was thinking maybe they knew each other and they struck a deal, but everything I looked seemed to suggest that this was just a deal that they struck at that time. So just supporting your comments.
So it's just wild, like that the Jets were able to get this value again. This was completely unheard of in the past 5 years. I'm sure I could find a trade that was worse going back like 20 years, but it took a lot of time to look at all the trades trading back in the second round, just looking for the Steelers. So regardless, past 5 years, that was unheard of, and that kind of hurt me. So overall, watching this tape and seeing what the Jets did made me a little sour, but it is what it is. The Steelers have been one of the best organizations at finding wide receiver talent. My bread and butter has been evaluating wide receivers in the past draft. I hope I'm wrong about the Claypool pick, but at the moment, I just feel like he's average. I feel like it's not a terrible pick, especially not for a second rounder. And overall, I'm okay with it. I would have been... I'm way happier. Like, I will take this a million times over going a quarterback or a running back like what the Eagles did. What the Eagles did was absolutely terrible. But regardless, I just wasn't as happy as I would have been. Doing what the Jets did would have made me so happy. I would have been so excited about doing exactly what the Jets did.
Hello?
Hi, did I cut out?
You did cut out. I apologize. You want to repeat the last few things you said there?
Sure. It's just I'm not completely sour about this overall. It's not terrible, but I would have been in love if the Steelers did what the Jets did. If the Steelers did exactly what the Jets did, it would have been one of my favorite things the Steelers did in the draft in like the past 10 years. And that's including like Devin Bush and stuff. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous because then you think, like, yeah, they drafted Antonio Brown in the 6th, but it would have been up there. It would at the moment for me in terms of draft day, you know?
I understand, yeah. I definitely understand. So as far as Claypool's fit right now, given everything that's going on, how do you see him fitting into the offense right now? Because my focus in front-loading the conversation on the first two picks is that these are the two guys most likely to contribute right away, and Claypool being the first should be most likely to contribute more than anyone else that was drafted by this team. So how do you see him fitting in? Because he's got to at least play a little bit.
I feel like he might be active from the beginning because he could play special teams. We'll have to see how good he can handle it at the NFL level. But I'm not sure he's going to really crack the offense until at least week 5. And it's only going to be for red zone opportunities in week 5. That's how I view it. And I think he's going to be the X wide receiver in that situation. They're going to put Juju back to his natural slot role for those situations where he comes in. And then obviously James Washington, the Z. I guess that takes Deontay Johnson off the field.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was confused about when I was looking at his tape. He did line up as a Z at times. You know, he lined up everywhere, but he was mostly an X. And that kind of surprised me because if you're looking to upgrade anywhere, I'd have thought that Z would have been the most likely position or slot.
I think that they really wanted to move Juju back to the natural slot position. I think that, I mean, I guess it's only for a year, and you might see Juju walk after this year, but I feel like when Juju was doing his best, it was because he was playing in the slot, and that's where he got a lot of his yards and stuff.
Absolutely,
so
that's true.
I think that was the idea. So I think they were hoping for maybe like a playoff push. They would be able to, well, as the X wide receiver and Juju back to the natural slot position. But I'm not exactly sure what the ideology was. That would be my guess.
But
as to what it was.
What my bigger question is what about Deontay, I guess, because I don't know. I guess I'm a little confused too. But I mean, there's time to figure that out. I agree with you, yeah. So when I was thinking about Claypool, I was trying to kind of, again, keep in mind that he's not going to be a big-time contributor right now. So I tried to break down everything I saw from him into different categories. As far as his route tree, you'll agree with me, Austin. It was pretty darn simple. He didn't run many routes.
No, not at all. His route tree was very limited.
A few other things I wanted to touch on. So what about his hands? I know he had some drop problems, but I feel like his hands weren't the issue. I thought it was more concentration based.
Yeah, I liked his hands. I thought his hands were pretty good. I thought that the drops were mostly concentration based as well.
And if you're gonna drop passes, that's the way you'd rather it be.
Yeah, because that's easily fixable. I mean, you have bad hands, you kind of have bad hands, but yeah.
And he tested well at the combine, so he's got great long speed. He was a good vertical threat guy. And the big thing about him is, I think this is his calling card, is the contested catches. Just like James Washington, when he was coming out, he can make those big-time contested catches kind of like a tight end.
Yeah, it's almost exactly like James Washington. James Washington wasn't very good at creating separation for different reasons, but and that's how I feel about Claypool. He's not very good at creating separation, and it's allowed him to hone his skills as a contested catch wide receiver. That's where Claypool shines because he is so big, like a tight end, as you said.
And then, so those were like the good things. The bad things, though, even though he had that great 40 time, he's really doesn't play that fast because getting him to full speed is like, flooring it on a 20-year-old car. It takes some time to get there.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, you definitely see him getting faster at the end of his route. But I mean, the 40 time was still pretty good for a guy like that. Finishing with a 4.42 wasn't that bad for a guy it takes to get to full speed so late.
Oh yeah, that's true. But I was thinking more so just playing through like press coverage or trying to run around someone more so, because obviously he can run in a straight line pretty quickly. But as we know, with guys like Justin Hunter, Darius Hayward-Bay, Sammy Coates, you need to do more than that.
Yeah, you gotta run more than run straight fast.
And that's the thing that I'm also not sure about. You mentioned the struggles to get separation. That's only going to get tougher in the NFL. He's not quick at changing direction sometimes, and I'm not sure how much better that's going to get in the NFL. And I also need to temper the fact that he ran a limited route tree because, how is he going to run routes in the NFL? I don't really know yet. He didn't run a ton of routes. I don't know how good he's going to be at it. And then you also have to buoy that with the fact that his quarterback play was awful.
Yeah. Notre Dame's offense has been one I've hated for a few years now, so it's not exactly great. But you know what else he has got going for him? He's an excellent blocker.
Absolutely.
Because of his size.
I saw I forget where I read this, but they said that he was maybe the best in the class and maybe the best they've seen the last few years. So at the very least, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets his first break, first playing time on the field in running situations as a blocker.
That would make sense too, because he can handle a cornerback. He could easily handle a cornerback. He's pretty good against. I saw him block some cornerbacks really well. So, I think that might be you might be right there, because he showed to be really good at it because of his size.
All right, and then as far as his, if you want to compare him to anybody, feel free to, and just kind of like what you think his upside is.
So for me, Claypool reminded me of Vincent Jackson, but after talking off the air a little bit, he definitely reminds me a lot of Evan Ingram, the tight end for the Giants. Their 40 times were exactly the same. The bench press was exactly the same. The broad jump was about the same. Their sizes are comparable and stuff. They remind me a lot of each other. And Ingram's made so far a pretty good career with not great quarterback play as far as I'd say. So that's good. And same, Vincent Jackson compares as well, just not as perfectly. Vincent Jackson was a lot stronger in my opinion. And the draft pedigree was about the same. Vincent Jackson went round 2, pick 61, if I remember correctly. So they went around the same area. They have comparable sizes as well and weight, but Ingram was the same weight as well. Vincent Jackson was a little bit slower, but regardless, he's somewhere between Vincent Jackson and Evan Ingram to cut it short. How about you?
I agree with you, and I'm going to throw a few more names in there. I have a hard time comparing him to many guys, but the lazy and easy one is Miles Boykin, just because of the Notre Dame connection, the same size, similar speed. Boykin was compared to Kenny Galladay, so take that as you will. I also will throw around Mike Evans, and in terms of size, Eric Ebron. So the Mike Evans one, he's not as good as Mike Evans, obviously, but I think of Mike Evans' size, and he was actually faster than Mike Evans, and a good contested catch guy as well. So there's a lot of different guys, but I think what we're getting across is that Claypool is a unique guy, and it's going to be tough to see, especially without the offseason program, just how he's going to fit in. So it'll probably take some time, but I think he has the best chance to contribute in year one.
Easily, yeah. He's drafted the highest for a reason. So, and I mean, this was a pretty loaded wide receiver class, so he might have had a higher value in another class to other teams. I mean, this class was wide receiver loaded.
All right, and then moving to the second pick, Alex Highsmith, late third round. This is a guy that I looked at pre-draft, and I wasn't crazy about him. Now, I didn't like many of the guys that I looked at this year, but edge rusher was a position where all four guys, I was like, I could live with any of them, even though Highsmith ended up being the guy I was least interested in for where I thought he was going to go. Now, I thought he was originally going to be a second-round pick, but he ended up getting pushed to the late third, so when he got picked there by Pittsburgh, I was happy about it because I figured that was pretty good value based off of what I had seen. But I've also seen stuff since that says there were only one or two other teams interested in him besides Pittsburgh, and that maybe he could have slipped another round. That is interesting. So I wasn't sure how to feel about that. And then there were people who liked his tape against Clemson. I was not big on his tape from Clemson. And the idea of taking him, he's kind of like he's an athletic guy. So, I mean, when you talk about him, he didn't put up huge numbers until his last year, and he beat up on some teams, so he padded his stats a bit. He's a little undersized right now, not strong enough. So you have to wonder if he's going to be able to add strength in what would likely be his redshirt year, if you will, behind Bud Dupree and TJ Watt. Can he eventually replace Bud Dupree? Time will tell. I'm not as sold on his potential as others seem to be. I worry that adding weight is not going to do a whole lot for him. And even though he did produce his last year in college, I'm not sure just how great he is because Charlotte is not a high pedigree school. And I mean, then again, neither is Toledo, and Deontay Johnson was great last year. But I guess I'm a little extra critical of it just because I wasn't crazy about him in general. He wasn't as safe of an option to me. But if it does work out, he can add weight. I think he could be a pretty solid pass rusher. Not anywhere close to TJ Watt, but I think he could be closer to kind of a Jason Worlds type of guy, a solid starter in the NFL in his time. And what's nice is that even though I didn't like Highsmith because I didn't think he could contribute right away, I think he's in a good spot where he doesn't need to necessarily right away. Remember, Lamar Woodley didn't play a ton his first year, and by year two, he was a good bookend along with James Harrison. So that's kind of my recap, if you will, of what I saw when I looked at him earlier in the pre-draft process and kind of my thoughts on him right now. I want to do an even deeper dive later on because I'm still kind of back and forth on him. It's kind of a love-hate relationship at this point.
Yeah, I would like to learn more later because since John looked at him, I actually didn't watch any of his tape. I focused on all the other guys since I knew John would know a lot more. I agree. I think that the best thing for him is take the wait and see approach, and this was like the perfect situation for him where he could sit. He doesn't have to come in and contribute right away. He could sit and develop, and it also explained perfectly what the Steelers thought of Ola Daney and Tuzar Skipper. It's exactly as we spoke about prior to the draft, is that the Steelers don't seem to be high on either of those two, and we're likely going to take one higher in the draft than probably most expected, and here he was in Alex Highsmith. So I think that if he could get bigger, stay at the same speed, that would be fantastic. And I think getting him in the third was okay. I think getting him in the third was made him a little better. I know John was low on him when he viewed him as a second rounder. Getting him as a third is better, but again, we don't know how many teams were actually interested in Highsmith, but that has never stopped the Steelers in the past. The Steelers have, when they want their guy, they take their guy. It's just how it's been. I don't really have much else to say. I am okay with the Highsmith pick for now, and I hope he develops. I hope he's someone that we see maybe 2 seasons from now. If Bud Dupree walks, we get to see a little bit more and can say that, yeah, he's developed into someone that can maybe have a better role on defense.
He's a guy that I think might have the best chance to stick around long term. Like, I think when you talk about, I think he's got the best, chance to be a full-time starter, because obviously Claypool's got a path to playing time, but with the how the Steelers are, they cycled through their receivers, and since Antonio Brown left, there hasn't been a guy. I think that Highsmith has the best chance right now, if he develops, to be a guy that's there long term. If that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. We lose you again, Austin? You there? Looks like we lost Austin, so we'll pause real quick and come back when he's online. All right, we are back talking about the Steelers draft. So now we talked about Chase Claypool and Alex Highsmith. Now we're into the fourth round picks, starting with Anthony McFarland, the running back. This was definitely the big surprise of the draft for me. We had thought all along if the Steelers were going to take a running back, and we hoped that if they were going to take a running back, they'd take one of the stud top guys at pick 49, even though we still didn't love the idea of that. Taking a running back here was not only surprising, but so was the name Anthony McFarland because of the type of back he is. He's not one of those big 225-pound guys. He's a smaller guy at 5'8", and 208 pounds. And he's a fast guy. He ran a 4.4 40, and he had a lot of big plays at Maryland. So he's a trend-breaking running back, maybe drafted a little early. I don't know. Definitely someone that was surprising from from a school that wasn't huge in terms of its football factory ability in Maryland. But yet here we are. This was definitely the biggest surprise. And I got to be honest, I wasn't crazy about it. I like it a little more now than I did, but overall I'm still disappointed with this pick.
Yeah, I kind of echo that sentiment. I watched this game versus Temple, Purdue, Syracuse, and Nebraska in 2019, and versus Ohio State in 2018. And my very first impression before watching the tape was that he doesn't play a lot. As long as any of his tape was 6 minutes and 37 seconds, and that was the Ohio State tape back in 2018, where the game went to overtime. He didn't play more than 5 minutes and 15 seconds worth of tape in 2019, so that's not exactly ideal. After watching, how I feel is this. Good player, wrong choice. I actually feel better, though, as he projects as a late 4th rounder, early 5th rounder. I heard the initial reports was this is a guy that was like a round 6, round 7 guy. I found myself to be pleasantly surprised. At first I was really pissed off hearing that, but people were wrong about that in my opinion. I was surprised by his hands after initially hearing he wasn't a very good pass catcher. It's not that he wasn't a very good pass catcher. He wasn't exposed to it often. He wasn't asked to catch a lot. When he was asked to catch, he did perfectly fine. I saw nothing wrong with his hands. I didn't feel like he did anything ridiculously terrible in that sense. So that made me feel better. I think that's why people ranked him so low. If you're not a pass catching back in the NFL, you're basically as good as worthless. I'm sorry to say, it's just how it is. There are some backs that can still do it, but you have to be really good. And you have to be good as a pass blocker, too, at least, to make up for it. But so, anyhow, his running is pretty solid. He's got some pretty solid breakaway speed, but his pass blocking left me wanting more. So basically, if he's on the field, you know he's going to be running. So essentially, use a 4th-round pick on a slightly better Kareth White. I do like McFarland, though, so maybe in the future I will be in love with him, possibly after James Conner leaves, if James Conner leaves, that is. But when you're a team that to win now mode, and this was the wrong pick to make. That's just how it is. Also, Colbert saying they didn't have a running back like McFarland is straight up bullcrap, and that pissed me off. Because, again, he and Kareth White are very similar players. That being said, White is likely on his way out, which is a shame. I thought White being on the field in 2019 was pretty great. I felt like every time he got on there was a big run to be had, and he was that speed back that the Steelers are looking for. Yeah, you knew you were going to run. Kareth White wasn't the pass blocker, and his pass catching wasn't anything to write home about. But that's exactly what you're getting with Anthony McFarland. I felt like this was a huge waste of a fourth-round pick. Not that I didn't like McFarland. Again, McFarland, I think, is actually a good player. I liked his tape. I basically threw out his tape against Nebraska, though. He played with a sprained ankle, and he looked visibly, his burst was gone. So I kind of threw that out. But, I mean, that showed me toughness anyway. But regardless, it's just, I don't know. It's the drafting a running back when you already have so many on your roster that are all decent together. I mean, you had a Pro Bowl one when he's healthy. You had Kareth White, who was a change of pace back. You just drafted Benny Snell, who's looked good. Jalen Samuels is still hanging around. I mean, he's not the greatest, but he's out there. It seems like a waste of time and a waste of a pick. There are so many other positions that needed addressing at this time, and I felt like the Steelers wasted it by going running back.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still torn on it. I mean, he's explosive, and that's nice. I don't hate the idea of adding an explosive guy if Kareth White isn't on the roster. I guess they really just don't believe in him at this point. And I'm not sure how they're planning on using him right now. My big issue, Austin, with him is that I feel like I didn't see him break many tackles. And when you're that small, I don't care if you're Usain Bolt out there. You've got to be able to make people miss, and I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, that wasn't really his strong suit. I didn't see him really forcing missed tackles either.
You know why that terrifies me is because that reminds me a lot of Dree Archer.
It's true, it could be. I mean, you could be a slower Dree Archer.
Now, I will say, one thing that makes me feel better about this pick and the way that he could be used in the offense is Matt Canada. I don't know if you factored that in at all.
I mean, yeah, but bringing in Eddie Faulkner didn't help with Jalen Samuels.
No, but I'm thinking there's a better chance that Canada might be somewhat involved in the game plan on offense as opposed to a guy like Faulkner. I think we could see more motion because the Matt Canada staple bread and butter is motion and jet sweeps and stuff like that. And I think that a fast guy like that, maybe you'll see plays like that where he's involved. I'm just nitpicking a little bit here.
I'm also a little biased here. Like when you say Matt Canada and McFarland, I immediately think of the 2018 Ohio State tape that I saw where, he put Anthony McFarland, 5'8" little McFarland, one-on-one with Chase Young, and that really, really, that doesn't make me feel great.
That's fair enough. Although I have a feeling that Ben Roethlisberger won't allow things like that to happen because he won't want him on the field. He's not going to want him on the field, understandably so. And I see people, ripping on him for not being a good pass blocker. Do you really expect a guy that small that isn't the guy to be that good at it? I don't know. I don't know. I try to come around to it, but I guess I need to see things first. I'd feel a little differently if Kareth White wasn't on the roster already, but I guess now I'm just already preparing myself for him to be cut.
Yeah, that's really what it came down to, too. I wouldn't have been as mad if we didn't literally already have a Kareth White,
It's just, it doesn't move the needle much. I mean, I guess I could be wrong, but I don't think it does.
There's a possibility you trade one. That's the hope. I mean, the Steelers have pulled off crazier. To me, trading Gerald Hawkins was the most amazing thing in the world last season.
That was wild. Is he still out there, by the way?
He's still with the Buccaneers. He lasted the rest of the season, and he's now on the offseason roster still. So
good for him. So he was able to survive his first contract then.
Yep. Yeah, he's hanging around.
Well, good for him. So we went from I don't think this is a secret. That was probably our least favorite pick, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
So for me, at least, we're going from my least favorite pick to my favorite pick, which is Kevin Dotson, the excuse me, the guard or offensive lineman, if you will, because he played a lot of different positions, from Louisiana Lafayette. The first player taken in the draft that didn't get an invite to the combine, which, let's just be honest, that was the wrong decision because he definitely should have gone. He was a 4-year starter at Lafayette, and this guy is a nasty run blocker from what I've seen, Austin. And he has issues in pass protection while they can't be ignored. The Steelers have talked about for the last couple of years improving the run game. I know he's probably not playing right away, but my goodness, that's his calling card is run blocking.
Yeah, Kevin Dotson, immediately I was excited. I was like, wow, I don't know who this is really. But it's a good pick. It's good for the position. I was excited. Other people in the timeline were getting excited, and it translated. I was excited because he came from a family of Steelers fans, and I was happy with this pick based on that alone. Anyhow, I watched this game versus Miami of Ohio, Appalachian State, and Georgia Southern in 2019. And I had to be honest, I love this pick. It's translated even when I watched the tape. He would have been one of my favorite players. He would have been on my love list of guys that are like, wow, this is a guy I love if I had looked at him. Dotson to me projected as a third rounder. He looked better against everyone he played against and literally bullied Appalachian State. I found his change of direction speed to not be great, and his get-off speed was a little slow at times, but overall his power was overwhelming. And him not being getting a combine invite is literally so disrespectful. This guy was literally a first-team All-American this past season. To me, that's whatever, though. It worked out for the Steelers. They got a good one here. Again, I love this pick. And I almost definitely view this guy as a guy that can take over right after Wisniewski's done. I don't view guard as a position of need going forward after this. I mean, you're going to have to look up for another backup once Wisniewski is gone. But Dotson, I love this pick, personally.
You know what I think the best thing about this is that this doesn't force the Steelers to have to move Matt Filer to guard if they need to keep him at tackle. So we've already got relatively good tackle depth with Okorafor and Banner, and theoretically Filer because he was the right tackle last year. But then there was issue at guard because then you basically only have Wisniewski replacing B.J. Finney and nothing else. So then the solution was to kick Filer to guard. Well, what if Okorafor or Banner aren't good enough and you have to move Filer back? All of a sudden you have no depth at inside. You add a guy that, even though, he's probably not going to be able to play right away, I think that he's going to be able to handle himself relatively quickly by comparison. And now when that happens, you could, in theory, make him the swing backup if you need to in time, and you can keep Filer at tackle. And I think that that's just the best of both worlds, because now you're not locking yourself into any situation. You can let Filer do whatever he needs to do, and whatever position battle comes up short, if it does in fact happen, if they are disappointing, you can address it and kind of patch some holes there. And I think that's really good.
Yeah, man, I agree. My way too early guess, is I think Kevin Dotson is going to start a game this year. I think there's going to be an injury, and I think that they're going to plug him in as one of the guard spots. I hope it's not DeCastro. I hope no one gets injured, I should say. But my guess is Kevin Dotson gets a start this year.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. He is just a monster, and you can't discount the fact that he started 4 different years. I understand it might have not have been the biggest school, but I'd almost rather have a guy who started the majority of 4 seasons at Lafayette as opposed to a guy who started maybe 10 games at Alabama in his last season.
Oh, easily. I prefer it easily, too. And, I mean, it's not like Kevin Dotson ever looked like he struggled out there. He looked like he was better than the rest of the Louisiana Lafayette's best offensive player, if I'm being honest. Watching him move people out of the way like a bulldozer was absolutely incredible. It was really, for an offensive lineman, it was a very, very fun tape to watch.
And it's a little different compared to what the Steelers are used to. So that's good to see. And even though his pass protection is a bit of a question right now, this is a good group of guys to learn from. This is some of the best pass protecting offensive linemen we've seen over the past decade, give or take. So that is definitely encouraging to see. And as far as the playing time goes, I listened to an interview he gave last week. This is not a guy that likes to sit on the bench. He is one of the guys that's just really driven to get up there. And he's like, I sat on the bench my first year for a few games, and I hated it, and I never wanted to sit on the bench again. So I think it's only a matter of time before he becomes a starter. I think this might have been not necessarily a diamond in the rough. I think that's used too often, but I think this was a sneaky good dark horse find and could become possibly the best player from this draft class.
I echo that sentiment.
All right, we're moving on to Antoine Brooks Jr., the safety. I want to call him a linebacker, Austin. I'll just cut right to the chase. He is a safety, but he profiles as more of a hybrid guy, and I actually liken him to being more of a lightweight inside linebacker that you see nowadays. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but it's not going to address the loss of Mark Barron, I don't think. I understand that he could profile as that, but I don't think he's there right now. I think he's a little ways away from that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think his range is less than that of Mark Barron. I was thinking that when I was watching him because his speed isn't as high as Barron's speed, and Barron's older now, and that's kind of bad. Brooks doesn't really have that range. Unfortunately for Brooks, I only had access to his 2018 game versus Texas and his highlights, so I didn't really get to see much. But like you said, if you were hoping for a replacement for Terrell Edmonds, this isn't it. He doesn't project as a safety. This is Mark Barron's replacement, a slower version that could also add special teams value. His role is limited, and it's almost weird calling him a safety with how much he pass rushes and plays on the line. But yeah, he's definitely that in-between hybrid player. His range is what really limits him. He doesn't have very fast speed, and he's never going to be able to play single high. He just works best as a box safety. He's a project player. I saw a lot of mistakes on tape, but the Steelers didn't reach on him I would have given him a 6-round grade. His tape was meh, and I feel like I didn't see anything he really excelled at, but he didn't have that defining trait other than bringing a lot of energy on the field, which was fun. I mean, but other than that, like he's just a project player. He's pretty cool, and it's like, what is this? The fourth year in a row the Steelers double dip from a school. I think it goes back as far as Cameron Sutton's draft class, where they drafted Dobbs and Sutton from Tennessee.
As long as we've been doing this.
Yeah. Every year they've double dipped at one school.
But so it was obviously Tennessee then. It's Maryland this year. Last year it was. What was it last year? I had to figure that out because now it's bugging me.
Yeah,
it was Michigan. It was Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
But then 2018. What was the 2018?
Gentry and Devin Bush.
Yep. Oh, and then it was obviously Rudolph and Washington. So, okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty, good to know. All right, well, yeah, definitely. I noticed that he played really hard. You know, that's something I should mention is that all these draft picks are guys that have like an edge to their game. Also, I forgot to mention with McFarland real quick, that whole issue with the coaches, I've seen people look into that rather extensively. That seems to have just been kind of a he said kind of situation.
Yeah, I didn't even mention it. At first, I was really pissed off because I heard that and believed the whatever the anonymous source at first, but it seems now more likely that the anonymous source just wasn't very qualified or didn't really know much because it doesn't, and no one else has backed that statement.
Yeah, so obviously that is indeed good news to see. But yeah, Brooks Jr., you talk about Barron, that's actually a pretty good comparison because Barron was a safety coming out. I actually remembered him being a safety at Alabama back in the day, and now he's a linebacker. So, it's a similar profile, but obviously Barron was a much more talented player. I actually think that Brooks is more of a Tyler Matakevich replacement because I think he's going to be a good special teams player. I just have a hard time seeing how he fits in on defense right now. And like you said, a project player. If he does contribute on defense at all, it's going to be as a hybrid player, and it's going to take at least a year, probably closer to 2, if ever. This is a good special teams pickup, and I have no issue with doing that when you get to this point of the draft.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, in the 6th round, you shouldn't be looking for starters anymore, even though the Steelers actually technically were. But, I mean, overall, not a bad pick to see if a guy can develop. You needed a safety, and you got one, sort of.
And yeah, they kind of almost theoretically addressed 2 issues at once.
You needed a backup inside linebacker, and you needed backup safety, and you sort of kind of did both.
They kind of did both, and they kind of did neither.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, when you're beyond round, I'd say 5, you're looking for either special teams guys or guys with high potential that haven't gotten there yet, if you will. Kind of like it. Yeah, I remember Tyree Jackson. I was like, this guy has a huge arm, but right now he can't hit the broadside of a barn. If he somehow could locate his passes, he's Patrick Mahomes. So.
Yeah, dog.
But in any case, and then the last pick was Carlos Davis, the defensive tackle from Nebraska. He is built like the traditional 3-4 nose tackle. How big is he? I forget. He's 320 pounds, I think. 315 closer, sorry. And 6'2", so he profiles like a traditional 3-4 nose tackle. But, there's a reason he lasted this long. There's a reason guys like this are getting phased out of the NFL. They just don't add much as pass rushers, and he's no different there. And he's obviously not as talented as guys like Casey Hampton were in their prime. He's a very limited player, and I liken him more to Joshua Frazier, who the Steelers took a couple years ago that didn't even make the team and is retired now, than I do someone like a Chris Hoke or Isaiah Buggs, reserve linemen that the Steelers ended up taking.
So, for me, when I watch his tape, right, I watch his games versus Minnesota and Maryland in 2019 and versus Wisconsin in 2018, which that Maryland game was fun to watch from the other side. When I was watching McFarland, I watched his game versus Nebraska, like I said. Seeing it from the other side was interesting. But as you'd expect for a 7th-round pick, the tape wasn't good. It's actually pretty bad. I don't really see any upside in him, which is unfortunate. He isn't strong and looks out of shape, has short arms that make it hard for him to gain leverage, bad contact balance. I saw him go on the floor a few times. Not a high motor guy, bad head fighting, not fast. I just don't really know what the Steelers want to even work with. I can't really blame them too much for the pick. It's a 7th-round pick, and the round isn't exactly oozing with talent, but I really struggle to see where there's any upside in taking him. He fits way better as an undrafted free agent, but I mean, the only other DT taken after him was Jashawn Cornell from Ohio State. I'm not sure he would have been much better, but at least Cornell is athletic and has a high motor, I guess. I think I just would have preferred to go Dane Jackson, if I'm being honest. Getting a DT in the 7th round was kind of a waste of time. But then again, there were some good, quote-unquote, ones left. I would have much preferred Raekwon Williams from Michigan State, who is currently a free agent. And I would have loved my prospect, Benito Jones, who somehow went undrafted when I gave him a 5th-round grade, as a guy that can be a run stuffer. However, he signed with the Dolphins as an undrafted free agent. It is what it is, though. I mean, it's a 7th-round pick, but I just don't really see the upside in taking a guy like this. Like, if in a 7th-rounder, I don't expect contribution or anything. What I want is something that's worth working with. I want ridiculous strength, like Cameron Curl. Cameron Curl went to the Redskins in the 7th round because he was the strongest safety in this class. He didn't start for long, didn't really have much other upside, but he was a 7th-round pick because he had ridiculous strength. Or I want a high-speed guy. Some guy that's going to be ridiculously fast and maybe worked with. Some guy that's going to have ridiculous size. Something. I felt like I get nothing with Carlos Davis. That's how I view it. I guess the Steelers view it that they get versatility. The Steelers have said that they want Carlos Davis to learn all 3 defensive line positions, and so I guess that's where the Steelers see his value. But to me, versatility. If you're going to do that, you can do that with any player. They want him to learn it. It's not like he already knows all 3 positions. They want him to learn it. Personally felt. I'm not super mad about it. I probably sound super mad about it, but like, this is a 7th-round pick. I mean, it is what it is.
I actually think about him the way I thought about Zach Gentry in terms of the comparison to what his high potential could be. I thought Gentry's potential at best could be Jesse James, which had just walked out the door. I think that Davis's best case scenario is Daniel McCullers right now.
Yeah, but even then, Daniel McCullers is like that guy I'm describing, though. He had that ridiculous size. So
yeah, absolutely. So he's what, 6'7", like 350, and Davis is 6'2", like 315. So he's more the traditional nose tackle, while McCullers is just towering.
Yeah, man.
So, I mean, but I think that's the best case scenario. But yeah, I'm not gonna get too upset about it. But I think best case scenario, you're looking at a backup. Obviously not Big Dan's replacement.
No, not at all.
So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the draft. So I know that we said that McFarland was our least favorite pick. My favorite pick was Dodson. Is that also your favorite?
Dotson was also my favorite pick, yeah.
Gotcha. So as far as the rest of the NFL goes, the best draft, worst draft, surprising fall, and rise. I'll lead off here. I thought the Cowboys had the best draft. Getting CeeDee Lamb where they got him, I thought was impossible, and I also didn't like that the Ravens took J.K. or my apologies, but I didn't like that they took J.K. Dobbins. What was it? Pick it was sometime in the second round, but I didn't like that they took a running back that early. I thought it was kind of redundant, even though they do run the ball a lot. And I just think that's never okay.
Yeah, that's kind of how I view it. Early on for me, when I was initially writing this, I had the Jets. The Jets are having a pretty good draft up until that point. I mean, they had some pretty cool players, Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims. I love them training back. The draft kind of fell apart at the end. It felt like they drafted a quarterback, James Morgan, I believe, and then they drafted a punter that was not Michael Turk, which I don't even know if Michael Turk found the team. Michael Turk should have been the only punter that went in this draft, and somehow went undrafted. And my punter prospect got drafted, Sterling Harford from Syracuse. He went to the Falcons. That blew my mind. To me, Michael Turk was one of the coolest punter prospects since Michael Dixon. So, I mean, nowhere near as good, but hitting 25 on the bench press is impressive for a special teams punter guy. So, regardless, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent about special teams players. I, at the end, agree that the Cowboys had the best draft, and just to go into it, the most surprising fall, was CeeDee Lamb, Neville Gallimore, and Tyler Biedish. And the common connection here is they are all Cowboys. I have no idea how, with just Jerry Jones being in control of the draft, they had such a good draft. But getting CeeDee Lamb where they did was incredible. Neville Gallimore, he became one of my favorites in the Mod Podge episode, was incredible to me that he lasted to the third round. Tyler Biedish, I was off base on again. But, I mean, the best center in the nation went in the fourth round. And they needed a center. That's perfect. I have no idea how that lined up for them like that. That's great for them. And that's not even mentioning the cornerback from Alabama. His name's Duggars? Duggars, right?
I do not remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. I didn't look at cornerbacks very much this year, but they got I know they got one of the top cornerbacks, which was also a position need when the guy that went to the Dolphins, cornerback. I always mess up his name with Felix Jones, and the running back. Byron Jones. Okay, there we go. I don't know why. I always think Felix, but regardless. So to me, the Cowboys had easily the best draft because they got so much value and filled so many positions of need that I was blown away by their draft.
The guy I thought that fell that really just upset me was Patrick Queen to Baltimore. The Steelers had to trade up to get a guy like Devin Bush. And even though I don't think Patrick Queen is as good, he's still a guy that can start in the league for a decade. And the Ravens got him at 28, and that just made me so mad. I remember we had talked about a guy like Laviska Shenault falling to the Ravens, and it'd be like, oh boy, who let that happen? Well, who let Patrick Queen get to 28? I'm not happy about that.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. I mean, it always seems like everything goes right for the Ravens. People fall right into their lap that they need, and they get the positions they need. I mean, they did take J.K. Dobbins, like you said, which they really, really did not need J.K. Dobbins. But, I mean, getting Patrick Queen was one of their only holes that they had on their team, and that just, it hurts.
And as far as most surprising rise goes, I know you're not crazy surprised because I know you said that a team would like his athletic traits, and I didn't disagree with you, but I thought at 18 where the Dolphins had the Steelers pick was very surprising. I did not see Austin Jackson going before pick 20.
Yeah, no, Austin Jackson did not project as a first rounder in my opinion. I thought Josh Jones, who was a candidate for most surprising fall, was better. I liked him a lot better, and finally the Cardinals made a good decision for their life and decided to take Josh Jones when he fell into the damn third round. I thought that could have been the Steelers' second round pick, be honest, than Josh Jones. But Austin Jackson going at 18 was terrible. For me, the most surprising rise was Damon Arnett, Damon Arnett.
Damon Arnett.
Exactly, dude. I didn't even know his name. I don't know his name. I had to look it up right before this episode because all I had written down was whoever the Raiders picked after Ruggs. Because I remember looking at it and being like, who the heck is that? Like, I literally was so confused. I had no idea. John informed me that he played across from Okuda at Ohio State. So, I mean, I didn't even know where he played. I had no clue. I literally didn't know who he was when they drafted him. And this is the first time that's ever happened in about probably 5 years in the draft that I had no idea who a first-round pick was. Like, seeing his name literally blew me back. So I still don't know what to think. I think it was probably a mistake, but, you know.
Let's see. The Steelers signed 10 different undrafted free agents. I'm not going to bother listing them off just because I don't think you really need us to. You could definitely look them up if you want to. The three guys we had highlighted, though, were Trajan Bandy from Miami, the cornerback, two defensive tackles, Calvin Taylor from Kentucky and Hosea Coatney from Mississippi, mostly because those three guys we think have the best shot to make the roster as of right now.
Yeah. Bandy was very physical on his tape. I got to see some Bandy tape on Twitter because people were posting about him. And it seems like people had him more as a guy that was going to be drafted in like the 6th or 7th. And going as undrafted free agent was a nice surprise. So with the Steelers Steelers been rolling with 6 cornerbacks, and with them not really having a 6th right now, Bandy makes sense. James Pierre can come out and surprise as well, but I'm only saying Trajan Bandy because of the tape I've seen. I should probably watch some James Pierre. And like you said, with the DTs, it's just Steelers don't have a starting DT right now. It's just, I mean, they do, but they really, really don't, if you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Speaking of that, the Steelers have said that Daniel McCullers and Tyson Alualu are the two guys competing for that spot. And like you said before, Carlos Davis is going to learn all 3 defensive line positions. So, like you were saying, it seems like the Steelers are just going to end up getting one at some point.
Yeah, it seems inevitable. So for the next episode we do, I'm going to bring up a list. It's either for the next episode or I'll write an article on the website. I'm going to look for options that the Steelers could trade for or either would be on their radar for roster cuts or via trade. I already have one in mind. I sent it to John earlier, and not earlier today, but a while ago, and he said it didn't make sense, like in terms of the team wanting to trade. And then I rethought it, and like, well, I can make it make sense now. So I have an idea that way. I'd have to think of a few others, but it's more than likely the Steelers are likely going to trade a 4th-round pick since at the moment they project to get one next year in the compensatory formula. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to look at 4th-round value guys for the most part.
As far as numbers go, there were obviously some numbers assigned. Chase Claypool got number 11, Alex Highsmith 56, Anthony McFarland 26, Kevin Dotson number 69 for now anyways. Antoine Brooks had 25, and Carlos Davis got 73. Meanwhile, Derek Watt got 44, Stefan Wisniewski got 61, and Chris Wormley got 95. Any comments?
Nope.
Alrighty. I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about this, but in case you weren't aware that there's nothing going on in the world of sports, Fox's Jay Glazer made comments about Ben Roethlisberger's typical offseason workout, or, lack thereof. It went like this. Let's not put the words fitness and Ben Roethlisberger together. They are allergic to each other. There's no fitness in Ben Roethlisberger. His idea of a great offseason workout program is doing one yoga session, playing golf, and drinking some beer. And he says some other stuff there. But he basically backed off his comments a little bit the other day. I think it was today, actually, or technically yesterday at this point. I think a little more is being made of this than necessary. But that being said, I've got to be honest, I'm kind of tired of people just ribbing on Ben because he's an easy target. And I just hope more than ever, like I've always rooted for him, and I've wanted to see him succeed. I'm hoping for that more so this year than ever before because I just want him to stick it down the throats of everyone else that's criticized him this year for him doing nothing other than being injured.
Yeah, nothing would be better to come back, win comeback player of the year, and then win a Super Bowl. Be fantastic.
I mean, honestly, why is this news? I mean, this shouldn't be news to anybody. This is the way he's been his entire career for the most part. And in fact, this year, he's done more work than ever before. And Bruce Arians was recently on Pat McAfee's show and said that Ben has been doing more work than typical the last 3 years.
Yeah, man.
So don't tell me he's not trying. You know, the media has agendas. We know this.
Yes, they do.
So
it's dumb.
Much to the dismay of people who want the Steelers to sign Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco, Cam Newton, and Jameis Winston and Terry Bradshaw back up and replace Ben. The only guy left right now, I guess I said Joe Flacco, but that's a little different. I think he might not play again. The guy that's left is Cam Newton because Jameis Winston signed his deal. Andy Dalton signed with the Cowboys because he was recently released by the Bengals. So Cam Newton's the only guy left, it seems. What's going on with him?
So, with who? Cam Newton, you said,
yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, Cam Newton. So I heard that the Steelers are offering him a $20 million contract. But, I mean, there might be a more lucrative deal with another team, so they might turn it down, as with Jameis Winston, as we saw. So
very funny.
Yeah. So, obviously, Cam Newton, in terms of real Cam Newton news, he said he's open to being a backup, which, I mean, that really was the only option at the moment. But so he probably will find a team rather than later. But, yeah, it unfortunately will not have the Ben Roethlisberger, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston trio that we could have had.
Speaking of the Saints, they had cut starting guard Larry Warford, a 28-year-old three-time Pro Bowler. So he had been apparently talking with the Bears, but apparently now they're no longer in to sign for him. So he is still currently a free agent.
Yeah, I don't think the Steelers need a guard anymore, but it would have been a nice pick if the Steelers were not able to get one in the draft, I would think, because, I mean, he's a really good guard. I mean, he kind of, if he was brought in, he would be the starting guard over Wisniewski. So, you know, but, I mean, now he's probably going to go like the Bengals and the Browns. It's going to make me really sad.
Frank Gore's career continues. He signed a one-year deal with the New York Jets. I think if he has more than 500-something rushing yards, he'll have the most rushing yards of any player, of any running back from year 16 on, in terms of
Marcus Allen has it, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, Marcus Allen has it with like 534 or something like that. But it's so cool. Frank Gore is doing a tour of the NFC East currently. Not NFC East. Why did I say that? AFC East. I mean, he's been with the Dolphins, the Bills, and now the Jets. And then next year he's going to wrap it up with the Patriots.
I'd love to see him pass Walter Payton. I don't think he will, but I think he's got an outside shot depending on how this year goes.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's still playing pretty good with the Bills. I didn't think like he was bad.
Let's see. Just a few transactions here. You want to cover those real quick?
Sure. So, first of all, the NFL has announced no international games for 2020. So, there's that because of the coronavirus. So the Texans released safety Deshaun Gibson, who would have been excellent with the Steelers, but he has since signed with the Dallas Cowboys. I'm sorry, not with the Dallas Cowboys. He signed with a one-year deal with the Chicago Bears. Then the Seahawks made some interesting offensive lineman moves, cutting starting center Justin Britt and DJ Fluker. They may have Finney as their starting center now, which is interesting as they face the Rams twice a year. And Fluker has since signed with the Ravens. And then Patriots fullback James Devlin has retired due to a neck injury. He was told it would be dangerous for him to play again, so he unfortunately had to retire. But he was one of the best fullbacks as of late, so that kind of sucks.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I just said that James Devlin was one of the best fullback as of late in the NFL, so it sucks that he has to cut his career short.
Absolutely. Definitely too bad for him. One other final note here. The XFL is apparently looking for buyers. So take that as you will, but obviously it's not good, and spring football continues to struggle.
Yes, sir. If we all contribute $1, we might be able to buy it, and then we get some cool jerseys and memorabilia and stuff.
Hopefully they would at least give them to the players. That is one thing that the AAF didn't do, which was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, they were really they were like clinching for every penny.
In any case, I think we've just about wrapped everything up today.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. We appreciate your support, and we hope everyone is remaining safe in these trying times. Things appear to, at least in some areas, be starting to get better. So that's obviously good news. It can only take this one day at a time, really, but we must push on. Austin, I appreciate your hard work as always. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com and check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. You can find our episodes on SoundCloud and YouTube under the name Stronger Than Steel Podcast. Until next time, Austin, have a terrific night, and everyone stay safe and enjoy the off season.
Everyone, have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.